welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, where all things football are injected right to your veins, with your hosts, Matt Donnelly, Calvin Shoemake, and Jeff Mueller.
What is up, and welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Spotlight Series. We got a very awesome special Detroit Lions episode right here today. Excited to dig into this team, which I think the more I dug in, the more questions I had. But hopefully, if you came to the same conclusion when thinking about the Lions, we've got the right guys here to join us to answer a lot of those questions. So just a quick introduction before I introduce the guests to what the show is. So during this series, we've been going through all 32 teams. This is team number 20. So we're getting there. Only got a dozen left after this. But it's been so much fun listening to you guys talk about your teams and learning about the teams. And no one knows these teams like the fans of that team. So we invite smart football people on to talk about them. It's awesome when we get to this time of year. Guys like Sean, guys like Nate, we start digging into and Chris, we start digging into the rookies. But we got to understand the teams they're going to find themselves in too. It can't just be the rookies. We got to understand the team. So to do that, the guy to my right, left, I don't know which way you're looking, Detroit Beastie. He's on almost every show I think I've ever watched in fantasy football. He's like, where's Waldo? You just have to look closely and you're going to see him in the background somewhere.
Thank you.
But yeah, introduce yourself. Tell everybody what you're doing and where we can find you.
Well, thank you. I'm Chris. I'm at Detroit Beastie. Again, it's not an ego thing, but I'd like to think if anybody's looking for you, you're easily found. So I'll say that about all of us here. So at Detroit Beastie on Twitter, I haven't done anything, but I joined the Undroppables recently. So that's going to be fun and very fantastic. But most of all that nonsense aside, the most excited thing tonight or this week, this month, is to be asked by you to talk about the Lions. Detroit is in my handle. I talk about the Lions often, but I don't let the homer. I'm not really a homer because then, you're labeled that kind of guy. Then nothing you do is respected so it's like, oh yeah, don't listen to him. He's a crappy Detroit Lions fan. But I am very excited to be asked on an all Detroit Lions kind of cast, an all Detroit Lions worthy show. You got the background, you got the green screen there. And if there's one thing that I do in life well, it's love and watch the Detroit Lions. It's awful, but that's all I got, right? Fantasy sports and the Detroit Lions. So thanks for having me on.
Well, as Nate says, we appreciate you dressing up for the occasion, man. You got your sweater on there. You got it buttoned up to the top.
Yes.
That's when you know it's serious. When you button that top button, man,
correct.
Things are definitely serious.
Well, here's the thing, real fast. I have a quick turnaround. I'm joining another broadcast right at 9:30. So I figure right after this, I can just stay in my seat. I might put on another, sweater or something, but this is what you got tonight.
Well, very good. Well, I definitely appreciate you joining us. And another guy, Nate, why don't you to go ahead and introduce yourselves introduce yourself. Hopefully there's just one of you. And tell everybody where we can find you and what you're working on these days.
Yeah, I'm Nate. Find me on Twitter at Nate Cheat. I am the owner of idpguys.org and a few other sites. Generally, I consider myself more of like the tech behind the fantasy football. I created a platform that has allowed, guys like Joey the Tooth, Sean here, Johnny the Greek, a lot of guys in the IDP spectrum to kind of make their claim in fantasy football and, go out and do great work. So I am a Lions fan. I'm from the Detroit area, but am a transplant out in New England. So kind of I'm in an area where I have to deal with a lot of Pats fans. So that's a little annoying. But, it's being a Lions fan is interesting, I guess, to say the least.
There's nothing like it, really. I'm not trying to cut in on your introduction time, but there's nothing like it.
No, cut off Nate whenever you want. I try to do it as much as possible.
But
that's part of the fun.
So you can find me on Twitter, and I generally my projects are, we just relaunched the IDP Guys website, fully redone, rebranded from the ground up. That was a fully custom job from me. And we're working on, actually, Calvin, you're involved with this, our rookie draft guides. And I will be working on the website that will go along with that magazine, which will essentially be a comprehensive database of players for rookie drafts and Devy, and just combining as much information so people can kind of utilize that as a research source.
That's really cool. And actually, yeah, I'm like a very teeny tiny small part of that. And like there are some really, really intelligent people that are taking part in that, who are breaking down these rookies. And one of those happens to be the guy right there below me, Mr. Sean. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at Laney1925 on Twitter. You can find my occasional work on IDP Guys. I don't do a ton of writing that much anymore. It's more stick to the podcasting side. Every year I do drop like a massive, like 50 to 100,000 word draft board article where I try and do, my top 150, 250, whatever, and give, 2 paragraphs of analysis and kind of why I rank them there. And I do that for NFL purposes more than fantasy, just so you can get an idea of the type of player they are before you figure out the situation they're going to. And
Sean
then
publishes that one time, and it's become annual.
Yeah, it's annual now because I'm about halfway through the new one. So, and I was doing the draft board long before that. I was doing that yearly, but now I'm doing I'm writing about each player. Before I was just kind of doing it as an Excel spreadsheet and putting it out there for everybody. Like mostly because I appreciate accountability, where it's like, yeah, I was really, really wrong about this player, and I'm gonna own that. Or I was really right about this player, and I'm gonna celebrate that. And it's also nice to be able to look back and kind of figure out why you were right, why you were wrong. And so, yeah, I kind of stick to the draft side of stuff mostly for writing, and do that occasionally on IDP Guys. Otherwise, I do the IDP Guys podcast. So
that's some really, really good things that are in the middle there. You talked about accountability. That's like we could do a whole nother subject on that, just as fantasy analysts, like just putting it out there a little bit and just being accountable, and then, being able to admit when you're wrong. But, like speaking of sometimes being wrong, we do have a franchise here that every now and then has made a mistake or two. So Nate, you know what? I'm going to start with you. How about what was it like, just I guess being a Detroit Lions fan? Like what are some of your just favorite moments, and like I guess just give us an idea of what it's like to be a Lions guy.
Okay, so are you ready for the most depressing story in your history of this show? Okay, so let me just paint the picture of how I became a Lions fan and like the history growing up. Generally, I was not involved in watching much football as I was growing up. It was something like my grandfather, my uncle would do. They would watch, U of M games, but generally, like football wasn't that big, where you usually like you gain your football fandom from your parents or whatever. The Lions were so bad when I was growing up, outside of like Barry Sanders, that no one around me really watched it or cared. If anything, I was going to end up being a U of M fan because they were constantly at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And so fast forward like multiple years, I went through, watching the Red Wings during the 90s when they were good, watching the Pistons in the early aughts when they were good. And then I got connected with a buddy, Johnny the Greek. He took me over to another friend's house who, this was at a point where I was of legal drinking age. So pairing together sports and alcohol and chicken wings, I initially fell in love with the game of football. And I was not a Lions fan at that point. It wasn't until watching over that season, seeing Matthew Stafford, and I kind of fell in love more with the players, Calvin Johnson, the guys that year, and what they were doing. And it was kind of became like, okay, so it is my hometown team. They're kind of an underdog. So I kind of latched onto them. And I figured, especially like look at what the Browns did after going 0-16 and then making the playoffs in 3 years. At that point, I remember everyone talking about, they just went 0-16. They got Matthew Stafford. I'm like, oh, well, maybe they'll figure it out pretty soon. Like, I know I was very young and didn't know the history of the team and all the curses and all of that kind of stuff. But, a smart GM, smart coach should be able to turn a 0-16 team as we now can see into a at least playoff contender in 3 to 5 years. It's been 10 to 15 now. I don't know what's going on, and I'm just kind of stuck now.
Well, Chris, let's go to you. Like, what do you like? Is that kind of is that everything that he just said? Did you feel that in your soul?
Yeah, absolutely. But in addition to a lot of that stuff, I mean, I feel like I'm older than most of the people that I've seen on Twitter that I've interacted with. And I'm in my mid 30s. I'm 36 years old. I was born in 84, born and raised on the east side of Detroit, which is a war zone now. I'm 20-30 minutes north of there now, but it runs deep. I have photos of me in the bassinet in St. John's Hospital on Maross, and my dad put like a little Lions hat on me and a Lions bib to throw up on. You know what I mean? So through the years, I'm with Nate 100%. Like, let's say any city you were born, especially Detroit, it's just in my blood. It's in my veins. And I'm going to, throughout thick and thin, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to defend the Lions. I love what he said about, there was a nice little stretch when I was in like middle school when the Red Wings were winning constantly. They won the cup the year I graduated high school. And this whole time, the Lions have done nothing. The first ever fantasy football draft I did, just the friends with a notepad, just write the first names you can think of. If you say it first, he's on your team. I drafted Barry Sanders as my first ever fantasy football pick in 1995. I was in 5th grade. But if you fast forward to now, what can we say about the Lions that hasn't already been said? When I look at other people that are Lions fans and they read about them, they write about them. I mean, any dolt could write an article about the Lions and how they need to bring the city back and this and that. But it's when someone talks, you can tell a lot of things. You can tell the pain, you can tell the anguish, but you can also tell the love and the desire that someone has. And this is for any team, but we're specifically talking about the Detroit Lions here. And they haven't done anything ever, really. The last time they actually made a run in the playoffs was like 91, 92. They were playing Washington all the time, and nothing came from that. So again, if you look at where we're at now, it's at a point where I can't tell you how many times in the last year and a half since I got into, the Twitter community, someone says, well, what are you doing? You're just like, might as well just keep punching yourself in the face, throwing yourself down the steps. You're allowed to switch. It's not an actual live woman that you're married to, like till death do us part. It's just a team. It's just an alliance. Like, why do you keep doing this to yourself? And it's a few reasons. My late father and I had a massive sports card connection. We went to the games like every year around this time, let's say in the winter, the end of the winter, we would go to Ford Field, and it's open during the day, normal business hours. You can walk in, you can go around. We go to the Lions Den. So for about 15 or 20 years, we would go there or the Silver Dome, and that was our thing. That was like his annual article, his draft article. We did this for 15 years. We just pick out a t-shirt and a hat, and that was it. It's just so ingrained into who I am, and it represents more than a broadcast like we're doing. It represents more than just being able to be the poor schlub on Twitter, like, yeah, I'm a Lions fan and they stink, but that's cool. No, it represents relationships that I had with mainly my late father, all my family and friends. It means more to me than just joking about it all over the place. I mean, you got to have you have to be kind-hearted about it, because don't take people too serious, people that you'll never probably meet in real life on social media here. But what's inside of me now, I know this is very cliche, but the Lions and anything Detroit, Tigers, Red Wings, Pistons and whatever, take them or leave it. And the Lions, they're in everything I do. That's and where it is now, I think about it often. It's like a girl, like you marry someone, or the one that got away. You're always thinking about it. I'm always thinking about the Lions. And again, I ask myself every day. So anybody, you don't have to keep asking me. I think about it every day. What could they do better? What could I do better in my regular everyday life? And the Lions have not got it together yet, but it's going to make it that much sweeter when they actually do. And, I can already see, I've already played it in my head, like any of you. They've already won a Super Bowl 75 times in my head and in my notes and everything that I'm jotting down here. It's going to make it that much more sweet. And again, people go, oh, well, what does it feel like? I don't know, but it's going to be, I will cry. I'm a grown man, and that's okay. And it's not so much about the organization. It's about what they represent to me personally in my regular everyday life, where I was born, where I was raised. The Detroit Lions represent the actual city proper. It was an absolute dump, and it kind of, still working their way out, bankruptcy, everything. The city of Detroit has come back. What can the Lions do to have their fair share, like pick up their end of the bargain, or pick up the slack here? The Lions are, they mean everything to me, and it's for those reasons. My late father, my friends, and my family, and it's just who I am. I mean, how can someone, you asked the question, how can someone, on a whim say, have a monologue about what the Lions mean to them when it's that ingrained into you? You can only speak from the heart. I mean, I don't have note cards about, oh, this is the first point I want. No, it's all here, and it's all here. And that's what it is to me. The Detroit Lions are, it's everything that I do. I love them, and I'm going to support them until the day I die. One quick thing here. When we were kids, I have the same three male friends since I was a kid. We met in first grade. And I can't tell you how many times over the years, again, we're all in our mid-30s. They got kids, fifth grade, fourth grade. Well, we got to say that the Lions will probably win a Super Bowl in our lifetime. Well, I'm 36 and it's not looking too hot now, but I'm still going to hang on to that fact here. And real quick, if I may, I want to show you guys one thing. I bring this to, let me get this here. If you could see this, it's a rubber lion, right? I've had this since I was a little boy. At the dollar store, the grocery store, you buy the zoo, the animal packs, the zoo. Well, I've had this one since I was a little boy, and every game that I go to, it's in my pocket or it's in my hand. I have it at home when I watch the games. A field goal to win the game, it's in my hand, and I'm rubbing the mane. I might be a psychopath, but this is what the Detroit Lions mean to me.
Dude, I love that. And honestly, like, so many little things that you said in there, like, you can take that, like you said, and kind of transplant it into a bunch of cities, and what fandom means to a bunch of cities across the United States. And in doing these, it's funny how, like, some of the fan bases have, like, different moods, or different attitudes, and it's like it's really interesting to see that. I've got some connection to that, being from New Orleans, like prior to the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era, doing, some good. But Sean, you're the one now, this one that hasn't been able to talk about their Lions fandom. The floor is yours.
So I don't know how I'm going to follow that, but I'll start with this. So we were born in the same hospital, and I'm not living out in Minnesota. I've lived in Minnesota, lived in Wisconsin too. So I experienced a lot of the NFC North fan bases. Man, like, you can say a lot of the stuff that he said about a lot of fan bases, but it's not quite the same because, like, dude, being a Packer fan is easy. Like, you have no idea, man. Living out in Wisconsin and all these people, like, I did a whole bit last year during the playoffs where Rodgers wasn't having his best game and Packers were losing. And I was just going through and I was retweeting all the Packer fans I saw that were talking about cutting Rodgers. And it's just like, they're so spoiled, man. Like they have no idea what they have, and nobody knows what it's like to be the Lions. I forget what it was, but it was like every single team aside from the Lions and the Bengals have won a playoff game since 2000. And it's like, we're just sitting here. I was 2 years old when we won a playoff game. Like, how is that even possible? You would think they would like accidentally win a playoff game at some point, like despite their best efforts,
Exactly.
you stumble into one, and they just haven't, man. It's been so bad. And so not just even as a Lions fan, I become a fan of the team, of the city I'm living in, when I become a fan of the sport. So like for me, I became a Timberwolves fan because I was living in Minnesota growing up, and I became a Brewers fan because I didn't really like baseball until I moved out to Wisconsin. So, man, between all my sports teams, I have the Brewers, the Lions, the Timberwolves, and the Wild, and it's just like a pit of despair. It's so bad. I have never seen any of my teams win anything. It's just terrible. So, like, yeah, it sucks, but you were comparing it to divorce, and I would argue that divorce is probably easier than switching teams at this
Absolutely
point.
is,
Like, you just see the divorce rates, it's like, nah, I think it's probably harder to switch teams at this point, man. I just can't do it. I would feel like a fraud to root for a team for that long and then just switch over. Yeah, thank you, Dingus. I may be the real problem with the Detroit Lions. I think it's entirely possible.
It sounds like all the fan base, all the teams you're a fan of are having trouble. There might be a common denominator there.
Yeah, I should probably it's probably in your best interest to just like get rid of me, but it's not going to happen. You're going to have to drag me kicking and screaming.
Start rooting for the Packers tomorrow, please.
I could never. But yeah, it hasn't been easy as a Lions fan. And the big thing I think that Chris brought up is it's going to be that much sweeter when they finally turn it around. Because, like, man, the Lions win a Super Bowl, like, we might have to rebuild Detroit again. Like, that's just how it's going to happen.
I actually had that thought, and it really is kind of an interesting thought experiment about what things could be like. I know, it's anyway. So let's jump into 2020 a little bit and talk about like just a couple of things that maybe you noticed during 2020. I mean, there were some moments where things actually looked pretty good for Detroit. I thought there were some bad things too, but let's toss it actually right back to you, Sean. Just what was 2020 like for you, and what did you notice during the season?
2020 was really frustrating. It's kind of an interesting, just like thought experiment in a sense where like I was rooting for the Lions to lose, and I know that a lot of people will call me a bad fan for that, but like, you're not rooting for them to lose because you don't like them. It's because like you knew that wasn't their season, and like you're rooting for the best interest of the team long term. And you also are recognizing that what I'm rooting for has nothing to do with how the game is played. Like me rooting for the Lions to lose is not making them lose. Like they're doing that independent of you. But
that's not how it works, Sean. That's not what I've been told my whole life.
Well, that's the thing, is like that's how people treat it, where they're like, how could you root for them to lose? It's like, I'm not making them lose. Like, I'm just happy that we're going to have a better draft pick.
As long as Chris here is rubbing the Lions mane, they're not going to lose.
Right.
That's how it works, right? Chris is making them win by rubbing the Lions mane. So really, it was just kind of a weird season because I've never really felt that way before. But I had just like this feeling that Stafford was going to be gone after this year. Like from the beginning of the season, I had this feeling, and like the last game of the season, Nate can attest to this. I jumped on our Slack chat and I was texting all my friends, and it was like, hey, like if you're a Lions fan, like I know the season's lost, but you got to watch this game because this is going to be his last one in Detroit. Like I had the same feeling when Kelvin left, where you're watching it and you're like, I'm sitting there, and I told my brother, who's a huge Lions fan as well, I'm like, man, we're going to know if they go out there and Stafford is just slamming targets to Kelvin, it's his last game in Detroit. He's gone. And you watched it, and you just get like, you get chills watching it because this is the last game Kelvin's going to play. This is the last game Stafford's going to play as a Detroit Lion. And so it was a tough season for me because I I knew that they weren't good. And like going into the season, I knew they weren't good. And I was a huge proponent of getting rid of Bob Quinn before the season started, because you look at it and you knew his process was bad. Like you could see what he was doing. And even if he hit on his draft picks, you knew what he was doing was bad process. And so it was just tough to watch. And Adrian Peterson coming to the Lions was super frustrating, especially living in Minnesota. Like, was never an AP fan. Couldn't be a fan when he came here. There wasn't a whole lot to root for. And I think the best part of my season this year was probably just that last game, watching Stafford and having an appreciation for who he was and what he did for the city, and knowing that it was his last game going into it and being able to fully appreciate that.
Man, I love that. And I have the whole thing where I think fandom is about more than just winning, and you can enjoy your team without them winning a Super Bowl or winning a championship or whatever. Like you can just like having Drew Brees in your life for 15 years, or Matt Stafford in your life and it's not quite the same, but like that can be a certain, Detroit Beastie, like you have interacted with someone who's a little bit older than you on Twitter, because I am. That's so. I would not have said that at 25, that's for sure. But Chris, let me toss that back to you. Just 2020. Any thoughts that you've got on the season?
Yeah, several, but I'm not going to bog down what we're doing here, because again, we could take out the year and just substitute it for every one of these past years for the last, let's be honest, 25 or 30 years. It's the same thing. And every off season, it's the same process. So it is at the end of February. So right now, the entire city of Detroit is kind of getting amped up. They're getting gassed up for the draft again. This is the year where they're going to really, hit a home run with every pick. And then at the next month, maybe we'll just do a broadcast every month, and we can all talk about what the process is, because it's been the same thing since I was a boy here. So in terms of the Lions season in 2020, as I've said, is more of the same old. They're good enough to win like 4 or 5 games, but that's it. If things go their way, they'll win 8, maybe 9. Playoffs, absolutely not with a Green Bay team the way they were, and not with Minnesota. Minnesota does this. They get on a wave. They get on a heater for like 3 or 4 seasons. The Green Bay Packers are always in the mix, and same thing with Chicago. Everybody in this division kind of rides a wave, except for the Lions. The Lions are always dead last, and nothing changes. It's kind of like at a support group meeting, an AA or NA, right? If nothing changes, nothing changes, and that's what's been going on with the Detroit Lions here. In terms of Matthew Stafford, I was huge on several. I was saying a couple things on broadcast leading up to the end of the season, and people, they noticed it. They recognize it. What do you think of Stafford? Do you want him to go? Do you want him to stay? And again, my love for the Lions doesn't hinge on one player, a quarterback or a coach. It's about it encompasses the entire organization and how they feed the city and how the city feeds them here. And Matthew Stafford, I said, I think it's best if he leaves. That's what they owe him. Him and his wife, he's such a good man. Him and his wife are great people for the city in terms of philanthropy and donating and things along those lines here. It was only fair. Matthew Stafford was the best thing that the Lions had in the last 10 or 15 years. And again, I know Calvin Johnson was here, a run of running backs they took in the second round. Calvin Johnson is a Hall of Famer, but Matthew Stafford is the heart and soul of this team. If he was the starting quarterback, the Lions have a chance week in and week out. Like, that's just what he does. But they were never able to surround him with enough talent to maybe put him over the hump. And I know later in the broadcast, we're going to get to some of these things, so I won't, bury what we're trying to do here. But I love what I saw, like the emergence of DeAndre Swift. That's the answer to my question here. What did I see from the Lions? The emergence of DeAndre Swift. And like Sean said, AP was kind of, like a wet blanket or a wet shower on you when you're all, amped up about DeAndre Swift. But he's going to be fine. Is he a long-term answer? That would be silly of me to say that now, and February 22nd here, but he sure as hell looks like it. I mean, we can be honest about that here. And I have one more thing, which is kind of 2021, but it had to do with the 2020 season, and that's simply put the trade of Matthew Stafford. And I'll leave it at that because there's a couple more things I kind of want to get into, but it's more so based on what you put together for us this evening in terms of the preparation.
Let's give Nate the last word on 2020, and then we're gonna turn that page and we're gonna go in, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, man, seeing Stafford this year and knowing that this could be it, especially towards the end of the year, after we saw Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia get kicked to the curb, and I hope they did it with prejudice. I hope that no one in Detroit lets Quinn or Patricia fly through Detroit Metro without at least a dirty look, maybe a soda thrown on them or something, because the amount of damage they've done to this team, looking at it from contract perspective, talent acquisition, everything, like they just essentially took a cat, shook it up and threw it. It's bad. But and then after they're gone, knowing that Stafford was going to have to go through another rebuild, it was just this late in his career, he could probably make it through it. But I mean, you're gambling at that point again with the last few relevant years of his career. So knowing that the best move for him, the best move for the team was to let him go, was a huge impact as a fandom. And you guys, Sean and Chris both touched on the fact that you could kind of know that Stafford was there. There was always a chance. I mean, you can look back to the 2016 season where Stafford had a record 8 comeback wins. That I remember watching every single one of those games thinking at the beginning of the season, oh my God, they're going to Lions this and lose this. And then Stafford brings him back and he does it once, twice, 3 times. Now it builds a momentum to where it's 8 seconds left in a game that we're down by a full score. And Stafford has the length of the field and you're ready for it. It's coming and it happens. The Golden Tate flipping into the Minnesota end zone, putting his behind, literally teabagging the face of the other player, the defender, to score the game-winning touchdown. That has got to be the best highlight.
So I was at that game, and so this was I know, but different podcasts. So I'll tell the story real quick.
I teed you up. Come on, man.
I know. So they were probably I was probably 9 or 12 drinks deep. And we're at this game. I'm with a couple of other buddies, Minnesota fans. And so there's 17 seconds left. And my buddy just turns to me and goes, 17 seconds enough for your boy, Matt Stafford? And I just turned to him all drunkenly. And we've had 5 of these victories already this season. I just turned to him, just grinning. I'm like, plenty. And sure as heck, they take it down the field, score, the Golden Tate flip into the end zone, and I'm just losing my mind. And I'm surrounded by all Vikings fans, and they are just so mad at me.
If I remember correctly, was that the year that we missed the playoffs on the Fail Mary? The Aaron Rodgers after time.
That might have been the same year.
I think that was it, because everything was, I don't think that we would have gone super deep into the playoffs, but everything was just lining up that team had such a momentum that they were going to go into the playoffs and had maybe a shot to win their first playoff game. And it was a whole exciting thing. And then this is, I think, a part of the fandom that no one talks about is how much we have to play the refs. If you go back and look, and it's terrible.
I don't even want to get into the refs,
but it's terrible to say, because every fandom is oh man, the refs are always. I mean, what about Aaron Rodgers for the longest time, like complaining about people landing on him, and not getting called for roughing the passer, all those kind of things. Like, as a Lions fan, if you go back and look at the seasons and the pivotal calls that have changed our history as a team, it's staggering. You've got what was it, the Cowboys?
You don't want to list these, man. It's a long list.
But what I'm saying is, do the research, look into it. It's weird how many times that this team has had a chance and somehow the refs changed the course of our team for that.
Sean, you should write an article on that to go on IDP guys.
They're out there. Trust me.
Tinfoil hat, Nate.
Chris, so let me ask you this as we turn the page to 2021. And this question actually comes from Sean. He said, are you of the opinion that the Lions should field the best possible team this year, or of the opinion the Lions should be building for the future? What say you?
Well, to answer that open and honestly, I wish you wouldn't have told me who asked the question, because my answer might come off as a little harsh. For them to try and field the team to compete this year would be unbelievable. It would not be a good move. It'd be something odd would happen. It would be embarrassing to say that we're going to do this. They hired a brand new first-time head coach, first-time GM. They traded Stafford, which I wanted to get into in terms of how I think that benefits them. I'll ask you guys real quick. I can't remember the last time the Lions had so many positive options. It's always been, well, this guy's going to walk, he's going to retire. They've been options, but they've all been trashy negative options. And now I think that they need to start, take a page from whatever, even the Washington football team, the way they've built that defense in the draft the last 3 or 4 seasons. I can't believe I'm saying this, that I'm envious of the Washington football team, but that defense is going to be very good. And if they get in a very young kind of studly quarterback that can move around and move the chains with his legs, that team is going to be dangerous. And I'd like for the Lions to maybe look at all factors here instead of what we've been used to. Excuse me, as a head coach and a GM coming in first time and thinking they know it all. This is what I'm going to do, and nobody can tell me otherwise. And they've all failed miserably. Why not take, and this is to the head coach, Dan Campbell, and our GM, take some time to get some opinions and thoughts from other people around you, some trusted advisors, people on social media, whatever you have to do. And with that one trade and them getting Goff back, personally, I would like to see them use Jared Goff to bridge the quarterback gap for the next 2 or 3 seasons, maybe, and then use these draft picks elsewhere. Would I want to see them maybe draft Zach Wilson from BYU, 7th overall? Yes, but it's mainly no. I'm telling you, 1% yes and 99% no, because you have Goff, who is a very competent quarterback here. Kid started in the Super Bowl, for God's sakes. But when you look at what they can do, the Lions have been awful at drafting. That's no secret. I'm not saying anything that's profound or earth-shattering. Yeah. They don't know what they were doing. How many times have the Lions just absolutely wasted 2nd-round linebacker selections? They've all been trash. And then the ones they let walk away, like DeAndre Levy or Kyle Van Noy, he's a starting middle linebacker in the Super Bowl. Lions say, we don't want you. You're not good. Draft you in the 2nd round. He's starting in the Super Bowl at middle linebacker for the Patriots, who won that game, if I'm not mistaken. Take some time. You don't have to do it all in one day. That old saying, I can't believe I'm saying this, Rome wasn't built in one day. The Lions will not be built in one day. They haven't been built in 35 years. So take time. There's really, to be honest with you, I find that there's no pressure on this coaching staff. Normally, if you look back through the hires, there's been a ton of pressure on these guys. Jim Schwartz, even Matt Patricia. There's been pressure, like they have to wear the world or the city of Detroit on their back the entire time. We have to win now. We have to do it right now. We have to win. And I think that's really been their demise, thinking that way. We can take some time here. So I implore you, Dan Campbell and Brad, our new GM, just take your time. Things are going to be okay. And with Jared Goff bridging the gap, as I've said, helping you at quarterback, you can use your draft selections elsewhere. This team needs defense. They need any and every person on defense they can get their hands on. Use those picks this season away from the quarterback, even the offensive side of things. 7th overall, cool. If Rondell Moore is there, like kind of a stud offensive talent, take him. And then you stack defense, and then you kind of wait and see, next year and the season after that, what college kids could we really, hone in on in terms of quarterback. You have a first round selection this year, and you have several others in the following seasons. So it's not going to be built in one day. And the draft selections that we have kind of tell us that tale. Things are going to be okay. Take your time. Let's do it right. There's no need to rush. That's where everybody else has fallen short, I think, the last 10 or 15 years.
The more I dug in, the more it was like I just personally from the outside looking in, it does seem like this is going to be a few years of a rebuild. Like it's not going to come very quickly. Just it's the Lions are $1 million over the cap right now on the latest projection that I saw. They do not have a wide receiver on the roster other than like Quintez Cephas or somebody like that. So yeah, like a lot of free agents, and then like. On the defensive side, they were ranked 32nd in everything last year. So there's like a lot of holes to fill, no cap room. Now they didn't in trading Stafford. I think they got a great return, but they didn't get very much for this season in this draft. So it does seem like there's going to be like a few years of this rebuild, maybe like, and you mentioned a couple teams, but Miami seems like a pretty decent, they kind of did a little bit like that. Sean, is that you're nodding your head? It seems like you're kind of on that same page too.
Sort of. Same idea, different method. So I guess I want to ask this question first. So what is the value of a bridge quarterback? Like what is the value of Jared Goff? I'm asking you, Chris, just because like you talk about him as a bridge quarterback and how you want to use him as that quarterback for the next 3 years. I guess to me, like my thought is that if you're not going to win anything in the next 3 years, you probably want the worst quarterback possible, because having a bridge quarterback that's not going to win you anything, like that really detracts value from the team rather than adds value. So I guess I'll ask that question first, and then I'll follow up with kind of how I view the situation.
Well, it's a great question. And it's kind of like a thought or a semi question back to you. It seems like we both have different ideas of what a bridge quarterback means. I don't know what the definition is. I think it's probably just in the eye of the beholder. A bridge quarterback to me is not a guy who's going to light the world on fire. They're not going to win 10 games with him. They're going to still be in the bottom of the barrel of the NFC North. And they're kind of, just be so 6-8. Or excuse me, 6-9, 7-9, something along those lines. And they're just going to be okay, where they're still going to have, let's say, a top 15, a top 12 draft pick every season with Jared Goff as the quarterback. When I say he's a bridge quarterback, as I put it there, he's just a guy to be there. You have to have someone to command the offense. He doesn't have to be overly aggressive. He doesn't have to throw for 35 touchdowns and 4,000 yards. Just do your best to basically be a game manager. So to me, a bridge quarterback is you're just kind of there. You're the quarterback. You're a professional football player. You're not really the star of the franchise. You're kind of just there helping things along. Now, if you sat him down and told him that, he would be unbelievably pissed and upset. I'm sure if you talked to him and said, well, Jared Goff, this is what we have in mind for your role with the team, he would flip out. He would throw everything out and say, that's not what I want to do. I want to win. But these kids are predisposed to that since they're little. With whatever they do, they want to win. And at a certain point, it gets into money, maybe. Who knows? But to me, just bridging it here, maybe 2-3 seasons. Let's say they even do draft Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, whoever falls to them there. He sits in behind Jared Goff. And I'm not saying Jared Goff is Joe Montana or he's Dan Marino, but he's a competent NFL quarterback with very vital amount of experience here, having done the whole Super Bowl thing, which people might say, well, that's not that big of a deal, but we don't know what it's like to be, the whole week leading up, the playoff push, everything. That's what I'm saying. The experience is there to just kind of, nudge things along, help them out where he can, and then they can kind of, bring in around him, I guess.
Okay. So I guess my thing is that, so in order to have sustained success in the NFL, you need a top 5 to 7 quarterback. You look at the teams that have been to Super Bowls repeat times, won Super Bowls repeat times, and you have a bunch of teams that have top 5 to 7 quarterbacks. In order to get there without a top 5 to 7 quarterback, you need a lot of things to go right on your roster. You need a very, very strong roster around that player. And the problem is that about 80% of a roster turns over every 2 to 3 years. So you can't really sustain success that way unless you get really, really lucky. We saw San Francisco go to the Super Bowl and then fall apart. The Rams, awesome example. Eagles, awesome example. These are teams that made the Super Bowl due to very solid rosters outside of quarterback, but it's tough to repeat that. So to me, I understand the wanting to build before you get a quarterback, but what I would like, the way I would prefer them to do it is just keep drafting quarterbacks until you get that top 5 to 7. And it may suck and you may screw up, but I think that the only things that should matter to the Lions right now is landing a franchise quarterback and surrounding that franchise quarterback with enough weapons, not necessarily to succeed right away, but enough weapons to properly evaluate if that is a top 5 to 7 quarterback. Go out and sign some wide receivers, draft as many. I don't care. Draft 6 wide receivers this year. Don't care. But put some weapons on the field and then just draft quarterbacks until you get it right, because you need to have one of those top 5 to 7 guys to have sustained success. And I don't think any Lions fans are going to be happy with having one run at a Super Bowl and then just disappearing off the face of the earth again. The whole goal of the NFL is to build a dynasty, build a team like the Chiefs that can compete year in and year out. And even though the Packers haven't won, they've only won 1 Super Bowl with Rodgers, they're competing year in and year out. And Brady and the Patriots, and just these teams that are consistently contenders, the Saints with Breeze, the Steelers with Roethlisberger, they're teams with really good quarterbacks, because as long as you don't turn over there, you have a chance. And so for me, quarterback at all cost, and give them enough weapons to evaluate.
Nate, do you agree? And I guess when you think about the draft, let's go ahead and turn the page a little bit to the draft here. And what are you thinking and hoping that the Lions do in the draft?
So, going on this topic of Jared Goff and the quarterback situation, I would say that what Sean is saying is Goff is just a little bit too good for us to be able to make it into a top 5 pick, consistently. To be able, maybe. And honestly, it's one of those things where it's almost like you're rooting against the team, or a suck for luck kind of situation. But we've been blessed and benefited from Stafford the past 15 years or so. We need to put ourselves in a situation where we might be able to draft that kind of talent again. And with Goff, if he does, who knows? He could come in and maybe there was something going on in LA, and it's a Tannehill situation where it flips the switch and then he's good. But let's be honest, that's not going to happen. That's a 1 in a million shot. So now we're looking at, 6-10, 7-9, we're just back in purgatory. So what I would like to see, and really when we got Goff in this trade, I was hoping for another quarterback flip. The kind of quarterback I'd like to see is a Fitzpatrick come in, or something along the lines of maybe Sam Darnold, something just lower tier. Obviously we don't want to be back at, an 0 team again, but it's just a matter of if they put together enough wins and then we're sitting at, pick number 6, who's the quarterback next year that's going to be available at pick number 6 versus, 1 or 2 or 3. So it's kind of a mixed bag. So I would like to see, and the other thing is I would love to see a situation kind of like Patrick Mahomes had, or other quarterbacks of that caliber, where they sat behind. Aaron Rodgers did it. Sat behind Brett Favre for a couple years, and then was able to learn there and come back out and take a hold of the team and be developed at that point. So, really what I was hoping for was Stafford to stick around for another season. We drafted a quarterback this year. Stafford plays, and then that quarterback, has time to sit behind him, and then Stafford's gone next year. That was kind of my dream scenario, but that didn't happen. So I think that, it's quarterback this year, or we get our wide receiver one, something along that lines.
Chris, what do you think? I mean, as we think about what they could do with their first pick and all the picks that they have in this draft, I mean, is that kind of what you're thinking too?
Well, I don't think by saying this, I'd be going back on what I was saying. I'd love to see them grab Zach Wilson. He's been on my radar for, a full 2 years now, just because, you like somebody and you see him, just because you don't mention them 24/7 on social media doesn't mean that you don't know who these people are and what they're doing here. Zach Wilson would be a nice find at 7 overall. Do I think they do that? I don't. I honestly don't think that. And again, that's the beauty of what we're doing here. We all have different ideas. We can all agree and disagree, but it's all in fun. It's all productive, let's say, right? The conversation is, if everything was one side, oh, I agree with Chris. Oh yeah, I agree with Nate. I agree with Sean. Like, it'd be boring. Nobody would be watching this. It'd be like, these guys are lame-os. Yeah. I don't want to do this here. But in terms of their draft selection, a lot of people have thrown around the Penn State linebacker, Micah Parsons. I'm not in love with that pick because a linebacker, if you look back through the years, most stud linebackers are found later on in the drafts. And that has everything to do with the scouting department or your GM. And I know from everything I've heard about Brad Holmes, he was kind of like the head honcho in terms of scouting in LA, albeit offensive skill positions and quarterbacks. I think when someone has an eye for talent like that, it's not all encompassing to offense or quarterbacks, right? He probably knows how to do all of it. That's why they brought him in here. So Micah Parsons at 7 would be iffy for me. But again, you have to take this stuff with a grain of salt. I'm just a guy at home in his office in the basement talking to you guys. I don't work for a professional football team. These are all opinions based on a guy who just reads and talks football, a novice, basically.
Well, that's the great part about this time of the year. Like, we've all just came out of our busy season, which is the fantasy season, where it's just balls to the wall, just trying to help people give advice. Now we get to sit back and start thinking about ifs, ands, or what have yous, and just talk. And this is the fun part to me.
I'll speak for yourself, man. This is my busy season.
I was gonna say, let's talk a little bit about what you think, because I know you've been looking at a lot of these prospects. I know you know a lot of the wide receivers. You've been studying a lot of these guys, Sean. So I think what do you, if you were the GM tomorrow, what would you be trying to do?
So if any quarterback not named Trey Lance is there, I'm taking him. I guess not. Okay, so if Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, or Trevor Lawrence is there, I'm taking them. I am very confident none of them will be there. Trey Lance, I think, has a long ways to go before he's NFL caliber quarterback. That's not to say he won't get there, but I don't know enough about Mark Brunell's coaching ability to know if he's the guy to get him there, because Mark Brunell has very little coaching experience. So Trey Lance would probably be off the table for me. I think there's going to be a really good player there for the Lions when they pick. I don't mind Micah Parsons as a pick. It wouldn't be my first choice, just because I'm very much of the opinion that most draft picks are busts. And so if you're assuming most draft picks are bust, you want to make sure that when you hit on a guy, you're hitting on a guy of high positional value, because even if you hit, and part of it depends on the usage, because Mike Parsons brings a lot of value as a pass rusher. And that's so much more valuable than your traditional linebacker. So if you're going to line him up and you're going to have him rush the passer on 60% of his snaps, that's valuable. If you're going to play him as a traditional linebacker, you're probably drafting him too early if you're drafting him in the top 10, even though he is a top 10 caliber of player. So for me, I would want to stick to positions that affect the passing game. So pass protectors, pass rushers, pass coverers, and pass catchers. So actually, I'll field this question real quick.
Yeah, let me just set you up real quick, and then go on it. But like, I can't believe that there's any Lions fan saying yes, draft a wide receiver in the first round, because I feel like you guys get burned on that like a ton. But like, there's not a lot of wide receivers, that are on the roster right now. And Mike's question, which wide receivers return, and is Quintez Cephas going to emerge? What do you think about that?
So I don't think, first of all, I don't think drafting wide receivers in the first round 3 years in a row was a bad idea, which is a hot take for a Lions fan. I don't think that's a bad idea. The bad idea was drafting 3 wide receivers in the first round in a row that weren't good. I guess Roy Williams wasn't bad, but like, obviously Mike Williams and Charles Rogers ended up total busts. But like,
God rest his soul.
Yeah, like if you hit on those players, you look like a genius, but they didn't hit on them. And that's the thing. Like, if you hit on players of high value, you look like a genius. If you miss, you look like everybody else who missed on any position. So like, you hit on TJ Hawkinson and you don't look that brilliant because like, it's not a position of high value. And that's why I also don't hate the Tease Tabor pick as much as so many people, just because like, at least they took a swing at a position of high value, and they didn't do that very often. But looking at the wide receivers this year, I don't think Quintez Cephas is that good. I think he's just a guy. And I think that the fantasy community probably likes him a good bit more than they should, just because he was the only guy there to really catch passes with Kenny Gallaudet out. I think it's a possibility that the Lions tag Kenny Gallaudet, but I don't think they should. And a large part of that is because of who Kenny Gallaudet is as a wide receiver. I think he's a good wide receiver, but he's good at something very specific, which is the case with a lot of wide receivers. Wide receivers are more role players now in the NFL than they are like true do-it-all wide receivers. And Kenny Gallaudet is very good at making contested catches, and he's not that great at creating separation. And in order for that to work, you need a wide receiver you need a quarterback that is willing to throw into those contested situations. You need a bit of a gunslinger. And that's what you had in Matt Stafford. And that's why Matthew Stafford and Kenny Gallaudet had the chemistry they did, and why Kenny Gallaudet was as good as he was. Jared Goff isn't that kind of quarterback. And so like, if you're planning on having Jared Goff bridge the gap between him and the next young quarterback who you don't even know who it is yet, like, Kenny Gallaudet is not worth the money you're going to be paying him to be a contested catch wide receiver with a quarterback that doesn't throw very often and doesn't throw very well into contested situations. So, and that's also part of the problem with the wide receiver market this year, is that like Godwin, very much a contested catch wide receiver. Now, obviously he's a better separator than Gallaudet, but same type of guy. Allen Robinson, not a pure contested catch wide receiver, but like that's kind of one of his strengths, which is why I kind of lean Corey Davis a little bit there, because I think for the price you're paying, he's going to be cheaper than the other guys on the market, and he does a little bit more of what you would expect to gel with Jared Goff.
In a fantasy market, just to keep on this real quick, as far as Quintez Cephas, I think the price is good. As long as it's like really cheap, like I'm willing to take the stab on, hey, this is right now the only guy there. So, let's see what happens. I'm not most of the mocks that I've been doing, he's like the last round throw-in kind of guy. As long as you're not expecting him to be anything great, like for fantasy purposes, I think right now his value is like enough to be drafted, and that's about as far as I would go with him.
Chris, any more thoughts on wide receivers? And like a name that didn't get mentioned yet, Marvin Jones is also a free agent. Is that is that somebody you'd want to see come back?
Well, absolutely, but he's not going to be back. All the tweets, and he's another good man. He's good for the city. He's a good actual man in real life, high character guy here. But Sean mentioned it. I've been talking and trying to speak Corey Davis into existence for the Lions since we knew that he was going to be a free agent. Curtis Samuel is another guy that they could bring in to kind of, he kind of blossomed this season into like a Swiss Army kind of thing. You could take a direct snap, whatever. But here's my thing, right? And this may be because is it an awful plan? Is it a good plan? I don't know, but I'm already predisposed to the Lions being so awful that it can't help but wear off onto other people here. So let's say, right, so they have Jared Goff. So, right, you can cut that position out in the draft. Just try and simplify things. They have so many positions of need here. It's like, well, if we think about everything at once, we're going to be scrambling like the Three Stooges on draft day. They don't know what they're doing here. So let's realistically say that, Jared Goff is their quarterback for the next season or two. So they don't draft a quarterback. They tag Kenny Gallaudet and they bring in, Curtis Samuel or Corey Davis. So, wide receiver, not a position. You have Swift. They don't need a running back. They have TJ. They don't need a tight end. So that cuts your problem. You know what they say about a problem solved is a problem cut in half, something along those lines here. So if the Lions think of it that way, where we have people locked at these certain positions, so why would we spend high draft capital at said positions? That cuts their problem in half. And as Sean has said, I love that, a position of high value. They can then concentrate on getting a secondary together, getting some linebackers in, getting a defensive line, whoever it may be. But just in the back of my mind, I just can't help but not think of that, cut this in half. We have this guy and move on elsewhere. Would they draft another running back 7th overall? Absolutely not, because they have Swift. So why would they, draft a wide receiver? What I'm getting at maybe is a lot will be played out after we see what they do with Kenny G. If they bring in Kenny G back, like it or not, they have a wide receiver. What free agents they bring in before the draft will probably tell us a story of where they're going to go in the draft in April.
Chris, let me start this question off with you, and then feel free to jump around here if anybody has thoughts on this. But like, we're talking about the offense. Obviously, Jared Goff is the quarterback, but do we have any idea what a Dan Campbell led team with he brought in Anthony Lynn to be the offensive coordinator. Like, do we have any idea what that kind of offense is going to look like?
Well, yes and no. The one thing I do know, he's going to make DeAndre Swift, he's going to take Swift to the moon. If you look at what Lynn did with Eckler over there. So we know that he loves, or he has it in his mind to get the running back the ball any way that he can. In terms of Dan Campbell, I don't know. The only one thing that we know from the press conference is he wants to be rude. He wants to be in your face. Like, he doesn't want to lay down and die in terms of personnel packages. And I wanted to get through the entire broadcast without Dingus's comment here. It's so, Pete, that's all people mention when you're a Lions fan. What did you think about the I'm going to bite your kneecaps off press conference? He is a young guy, a first-time coach, thrust in front of a fan base who's been dying for anything for so long. And he spoke, he didn't have anything written down, I don't think. And he's just speaking from the heart. And he probably played into, the Detroit is tough moniker, Detroit versus everybody moniker. So I can't tell you how many shows I've been on in the last 2 months. That was the first question for me. And that was the only question for me because I'm a Detroit Lions fan. So long-winded way to answer your question here. We don't know. And I guess that's kind of the exciting thing, because prior seasons, we know what we're getting and we just settle for it. Yep. Stafford is our quarterback. He's going to heave the ball to Gallaudet, and that's just what they're not going to have a 1,000-yard rusher. And really, the defense, you could drive a truck through, the defensive line, and that's it. So this time coming around now, we don't know what to expect. We don't know what the team is going to look like, and I find that exciting.
Speaking to the whole bite your kneecaps off thing, as someone
I loved it, by the way.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
But Matt mentioned
fantastic.
It there, so.
But so a lot of people, and especially, I'm out here in Connecticut, very, I guess you'd say wealthy, higher, whatever, highbrow people, what have you. But having grown up in Detroit, the blue collar like type of people out there, and like my family was very much like steel mill workers and stuff. Bite your kneecaps is a common saying for people in that like
Really?
as far
I
as
didn't know
like
that.
No.
yeah, it's it's
Never heard
scrappy.
that. No. Yeah.
I mean, he kind of played it out like really extensively, but it's like, you know, it's like you're gonna knock me down and I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna bite your kneecap. Like it's a scrapping, like when you're just in the back, you know, fighting back alley fighting kind of shit. Like I don't know, I've heard it before. It's not sorry, I'm doing my best, but
That's
yeah,
Avengers level. That's fine.
okay.
All right, that's Avengers level. Okay.
It's still
Sure,
PG.
sure.
Yeah, it's PG.
Yeah. But like it's I wouldn't say it's like super common, but it is a thing that has been said before. I've heard, you know, and so for him to do that, I felt like felt like it embodied Detroit a little bit, embodied that blue collar aspect, and having sat through Patricia, who was the rocket scientist, failed rocket scientist. You got Caldwell, who was honestly a great coach, just couldn't get over that hump. And a lot of people, I mean, I wrote an article back then that he was on the hot seat that season. And I think that, you know, looking back, that was premature and they should have tried to figure it out with him. We were at 9-7 pretty much, you know, throughout those few seasons with him. There could have been a break. That was the chance, because when they switched over to Patricia, it was all over. But no, I like what I'm seeing so far with Campbell. It reminds me a little bit of Jim Shorts in that intensity. But we're gonna have to see what happens this offseason to know kind of what's gonna be. Like we're talking about who he could be picking in the first round of the draft as far as the GM goes, Brad Holmes. And we can't know, you know, we don't know if they have the ideas that like Chris has, where it's like, okay, and if you go back to like what has been said about Jared Goff, like the Holmes came from LA, so there's that connection, and he's the one that scouted Goff, so of course he likes Goff. So does it stop there? Is he now tied to Goff? Could this be something that's like more extended than 3 years? You know, and this could be his downfall eventually, if we're even going to start calling that this early. But or is he going to do like what Sean says and maybe draft a quarterback early and not completely be tied to Jared Goff right away? Like these are the things that we need to see as fans to know even what's going to happen.
So I think we have a pretty good idea of what the Lions offense is going to look like next year. Because we know that Anthony Lynn likes to run the football. We know the Lions are going to want to run the football. We know that Jared Goff is probably not a good enough quarterback to demand airing it out. We also know that the Lions are probably not going to be very good, and they're going to be playing from behind, and they're going to have to throw the football. So it's probably going to look a lot like what it did last year on offense, where you start off running the ball with Adrian Pearson won't be there probably this year, but last year it was run the ball with Adrian Peterson as much as possible until you fall behind and then start airing it out. And that's probably going to be a lot of what we see this year, just because of, you know, historically what Anthony Lynn has done as an offensive coordinator. And I forget who did the article, and I don't want to call anybody out, but there've been a lot of talks about Anthony Lynn actually like playing more to the talent that he has on offense. It was a little misleading. If you go back and you look at his like neutral game script, so like less than 20% win probability, all that stuff from runningbacksdon'tmatter.com. I think it's a Ben Baldwin site. If you haven't been there, it's awesome site, awesome source of information, but they give you game neutral or game script neutral situations and their run frequency. And like the Anthony Lynn is pretty much always in the bottom half of pass frequency in early downs in game script neutral situations. So he likes running the football, and that's what he's going to want to do, but they're going to have to throw it out of necessity.
Excuse me. Sorry. I want to ask you real quick, Sean. You said that the name of the website is Running Backs Don't Matter.
It's rbsdm.com.
RBSDM. It's gonna probably pop some weird porn site's gonna probably pop up.
I know that's. Yeah. I was really worried to go to it in the first place.
BDSM.com.
Like Ben Baldwin had, which also, if you're not following Ben Baldwin, he does some of the best analytics work on Twitter. He's a Seahawks fan, part of the Let Russ Cook movement. Okay. But yeah, I was like, he's got to be trolling with this name right now. But yeah, I'll drop you the link to that site after we jump off here. It's pretty good.
Thank you.
Speaking of porn sites or whatever, Matt, why are you so pink?
It's the lighting. I'm working on it. So I just ordered some new fabulous bedroom lighting for downstairs here. So hopefully the Amazon will send me that gift. Also, would not recommend using the website that I used for it. So we're working on that as well. I seen that Calvin had some power issues, so I wanted to jump in here real quick and try and save the day. Quick here.
We don't need saving. We don't need you.
Wow.
Well, that's kind of harsh, isn't it?
It's a little harsh. I had to. Sorry.
No, sorry about that. I had a power strip apparently come out of the wall that I didn't realize, but so I appreciate you jumping in. It's all fixed now. And honestly, I could probably spend another hour talking to all of you guys about this, but I think the real reason why Matt's here is he's like, hey, hurry up. We have to go to our next show.
Yeah, you got Paul Charchian on next, and that dude's awesome. So if you're here for the Lions talk, stick around for that, because that local radio host out here in Minnesota on K-Fan. So he's awesome, dude.
We have to do this again because
Absolutely.
This was really good. I loved hearing from every single one of you guys, and love your perspective. Love, what you guys all added just a ton of things that I think are really valuable for people to think about when they think about the Detroit Lions, when they think about drafting Detroit Lions coming up in drafts and things like that, and as they're watching the offseason. And I think after the NFL draft, we should all come back and just recap kind of what they did and, how it's going to fit into what we're going to do this season. And just, is Jared Goff a top 5 quarterback, Sean?
No, he's not.
No, I mean, I'm not that out of touch. Just to say that he's a top 5 quarterback. I think after getting back on after the draft would be fantastic, and then we could all say, "Hey, Sean, remember when you said they were going to do whatever? Just make fun of each other and put each other down, because that seems to be all the rage on social media. You suck. You don't agree with me, so therefore, you stink, and I hate you.
Put me on blast. I deserve it."
Sean, where can everybody, or Nate, where can everybody find you?
On Twitter at Nate Cheat. I run the IDP guys. Obviously, we've got the podcast IDP guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Find me on Twitter.
He's got no fans.
I'm going to jump in here on this one real quick, because if you've gone to the new DynastyVipers.com website, that was all thanks to Nate. He put his time in there, so you're going to want to hit him up. You need some website work done, design. Make sure you hit Nate up there, okay? He's done a fabulous job for us here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And IDP guys is such a great site. If you're playing in any IDP leagues, I mean, just follow Nate. He's doing great stuff. It's really cool to have you on the show. Sean, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Lanny1925 or over at the IDP guys.
Really looking forward to your annual work that you do every year. Really looking forward to that. Chris, how about you?
Pretty simple. At Detroit Beastie, I pride myself on getting back to anybody and everybody that tags me, DMs me, anything. So you could find me there. Anything, nothing is off limits. Thanks so much for having me, and I appreciate such a spirited conversation.
You're tremendous on Twitter, man. It's been great following you. And I think the first time I ever met you was on a podcast, I think with Nate.
Skinny Gronk. That's when Matt was there. Skinny Gronk came about.
Yeah,
you changed your handle for a minute.
Was the guy that did that. Yeah.
Change your handle, and then things probably started to get more serious for you. So I can't go by this moniker anymore.
That's too bad. You should have stuck with it. I like Skinny Gronk. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I should've.
Nate and Lanny are absolutely horrible at promoting themselves. They also got a fantastic new tool coming out there with the IDP guys as well that you're going to want to check for your IDP scoring settings and stuff.
Oh, it's out.
You're going to want to check that out because that's a difference maker in the IDP world. And we have the IDP guys DFD draft magazine coming here again, the second annual. That you definitely want to get yourself some of that. You go to the IDP guys website, get an early subscription on that. Spend some money, gets all kinds of content. I think there's a deal where you get both the IDP, the DFD magazine, plus a subscription to IDP guys in one shot. So,
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Matt.
While you're, yeah, no, it really is tremendous. Like that's part of what bringing you guys on. I've been trying to bring guys on that are doing fantastic work and are smart guys. I'm stuck with Matt most days, so having smart people on to talk to is really
Fair
important. So for these guys, for Matt, make sure you're subscribing to the Dynasty Vipers and following the @Dynasty Vipers, and I'm @Calvin and Hobby. And for these guys, we hope you guys have a good night. And